Okay, welcome to video 11, all prophecies and context. You notice that we've got two verses going to Zechariah here, so we're going to look at both of those. We've already done the Daniel chapter 17, so we're going to look at Matthew 26:31, and we're going to go all the way up to 27:10, since that also quotes Zechariah. And we'll look and see what 26:64 said, because I just mentioned the last thing we wrapped up with was Daniel chapter 7 was about Christ giving the throne or the scepter, and I said that that's at the end time, Judgment Day. Same correlation to Revelation. So we already went all through that. So let's just see what all these three say in Matthew, and then we can come back and look at Zechariah. So 26:31. Alright, so first of all, we kind of did, I was pointing out the end time context over here in chapter 24, and well, there's a little more of it here, I would say, because my chapter heading says the reckoning day on chapter 25, starting around verse 31. So, but all of this is about inheriting the kingdom of heaven, because we went down to 24:44 approximately, and I mentioned the next about the faithful servant and all that. So that's the end. Faithful servant inheriting the kingdom of heaven. Then chapter 25 starts out same thing. 10 bridesmaids. It's saying about the kingdom of heaven. 5 have oil in their lamps, 5 don't. So half, that's what it's saying, is half of the Jews for Christ, in other words, haven't really bothered to, they claim Christ, they haven't bothered to get the oil in their lamp, and they didn't plan ahead, so they haven't read the Bible and studied it like they should. In other words, they don't have oil in their lamp. They can't quote any of these prophecies. They don't know them. They should know, or at least read through all this stuff. If they claim to be a bridesmaid, then they should be able to tell you about all this prophecies that apply to the bridesmaids. That's the way I look at it. They don't have oil in their lamp so they're not accepted into the kingdom of God, because they didn't do just the basic stuff. So I think that what he's giving this idea is that half of the people who should be allowed into the kingdom of God are not actually allowed, because they claim Christ, but yet they're really not following His law. They're not doing the things that they should be doing that the law requires, in other words. And they don't even understand. They're just going to church, giving money, listening to pastors, supporting the church, and they think that's all there is to it. Or that's all they're willing to do, let's put it that way. Alright, however, there's others that inherit the kingdom, prepare for you from the foundation of the world. So that's 25:34, for example, because they followed God, they did the right things. However, that could be Jews for Christ versus Jews against Christ. You could look at it that way and say, well, it's really not, There's different ways you can look at it if you want to, but I still say wheat and tares, so, it's going to burn the tares just because you don't get into the kingdom of God, and that doesn't mean you're going to be burnt as a tare because you didn't reject Christ, in other words. I don't know. So there's a couple of ways you could look at it. Still, and the reason I say that, if you're going down to the end of 25, was mine, I have to look at the King James again, see what it says. On mine, it says you never did, since you never did it to the least of these, in other words, you didn't help people, you didn't, when they were thirsty, you didn't give them, when they were naked, you didn't clothe them, so on and so forth. And he says, then I will dismiss these into a long correction, but the well-doers to an enduring life. So the well-doer is the one that understands law, and that's all laid out in Matthew chapter 5, right? About the kingdom of heaven, who qualifies for the kingdom of heaven. So all people that do the things in chapter 5 that qualify and understand following God's law and doing the correct things. Those are the ones that get the enduring life. The other ones, it says dismissing into a long correction. Now, King James may say it different. But at any rate, so that's a thought. Alright, and then we're looking for 26:31. Okay, so we're at 26. And that's where he says, all you will be ashamed of me, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd. So that's when Christ is going to be killed. So it's 26 starts with the approaching Passover. It says, now Jesus finished these discourses, which he just finished, about the ones that would get into the kingdom of God. Do you know that after 2 days, the Passover is to be celebrated, the Son of Man is going to be betrayed. After this, the chief priests, professors, elders assembled in the court of the high priest, was Caiaphas, consulted whether they could arrest Jesus by means of a trick and assassinate him. So they're still trying to kill him. Never afraid, not during the festival, because they're afraid of starting a riot. So they don't want to piss off the people. They want to do it under darkness, under cover of darkness, where no one knows what happened, right? And kill them as silently as they can. That's what they would like to do. So here again, Jesus from Bethany, house of Simon the leper, a woman, very valuable for him. So this sounds like the same thing kind of about the spikenard that we already talked about. Candy poured on his head. Disciples said, to what purpose is all this waste? It might have been sold for a good deal and given to the poor. That sounds exactly like what we already read. Jesus just says we have the poor with you always. So it reads a little different, but it really looks like Simon Iscariot when he was talking about the spikenard. But in reality it looks like it reads a little different. Alright. So then Judas Iscariot goes to the chief priest and says he'll commit treason against Christ agrees for 30 pieces of silver. Well, that's important because, and it says in my footnote, about 5 pounds, 30 pieces of silver is 5 pounds of silver. Well, it sounds a lot to us, but maybe not so much at that point necessarily, but a good wage, I'm sure. And from that time he sought a fitting opportunity to betray him. So it's 26:16. So that's how we're leading up to it. And then that's how he ends up being killed. So, alright. So he had them go make ready for the Passover. So he was going to follow his own law and go to the Passover, right? Right? Okay. So you can read through all that. All of you drink of it, for this is my blood of the new settlement, which is shed for the removal of many sins. So he's talking about dying on the cross is the new settlement, shed for the removal of sin. However, at present, I will not drink of the wine. Until that day when I drink it with you new in the kingdom of my Father. Okay. Then they sang a hymn, went out to the Mount of Olives, where Jesus said to them, all of you be ashamed tonight, for it's written, strike the shepherd. So, apparently that night then would be the night where they captured him. Alright, but after my resurrection, I will go before you into Galilee. So he's telling them, maybe they don't really understand what that means, but then after my resurrection, so that would be, wow, you're going to be resurrected. Well, if they're going to believe on him as the one who can resurrect them, which they were expecting, as we saw in Acts and others, they were praying daily in expectation of being resurrected, then obviously he has to be resurrected to show that he's the one they're waiting on, but also to remove the sin. So he's saying that's why it has to be done. Okay, and then 2664. So let's just look through the rest of this. So we all know this. Nothing I need to point out here. Get to verse 37. Okay. Judas came along with a crowd armed with swords from the chief priests and elders. So they sent out soldiers, and then Judas Iscariot kisses him, identifies him, and then Peter, whatever, drew his sword, struck the officer, cut his ear off. Jesus said, "Put your sword back, for those who take the sword will fall by the means of the sword." Okay. Now, this connects, you recall, to Revelation, and I should have looked that up. Where would that be? 16, 17, somewhere up there. 16 or 17, chapter 16, 17 of Revelation. Talks about if you kill people by the sword, you'll be killed by the sword. I can't think of exactly, but it's cross-reference to this. You can find it. You probably, if you have a cross-reference Bible, you should just look. You should go to Revelation chapter 16 or 17. And what that means is at the end time, then you can't just go out and kill people. Obviously, you can protect yourself. That's always part of God's law, being able to protect yourself, protecting your family. But you can't go out. The idea is you're not to go out and hunt other people down that maybe are, enemies of Christ, and maybe they're going to, you feel like maybe they're going to be a problem for you, and you can't go out and attack them. However, if someone comes to attack you, you can protect yourself. That's the idea. Okay. Same thing at the end time. You can't just arbitrarily go out and hunt people down that you know have committed treason against their nation. Just look at it that way, because God's going to take care of that. So that's the idea. So, struck the officer of the high priest. So he healed his. And then he says, "With me 12 armies of angels. How then could the scriptures be fulfilled that it must come about in this way?" Okay, well, what scriptures is he talking about? Now, he obviously could quote these scriptures he's talking about. You should see a cross-reference to Isaiah 53:7, but there are others, okay, in Isaiah and elsewhere. And then Jesus addressed the crowd, because he was there in the temple. Obviously, they didn't want to do it in the temple because they didn't want to start a riot. But, again, all of this has occurred in order that the writing of the prophets might be fulfilled. So think Moses, the prophets, and Psalms. So he's saying that this was in prophecy, okay? And it is in prophecy about the Jews against Christ who will kill him, who won't listen and won't do the things that are right. They just care about their money and their positions of power and their businesses and so on and so forth. Okay. Then those who arrested Jesus took him away to Caiaphas, where the professors and elders, think Jews against Christ, Peter followed at a distance. Now the chief priests and the whole Senate, so there's all your leadership. Think your government and all the people that run your government. Sought out people to lie so they might kill them. But they could not procure these liars, although many liars came forward. They came up asserting different things. One said, I'm able to demolish the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. And the high priest jumped up and said, have you no reply? What do these men witness against you? But Jesus kept silent. Well, yeah, there's plenty of things he could say, but like he said, to fulfill prophecy, he had to die to take away the sin. So either way, it was already preordained. Wasn't any point in him saying much. Obviously, could have said a lot of things. Put you upon oath, so you may answer us. And then he says, well, you stated the fact. I'll tell you more. In future, you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of that power and advancing upon the clouds of heaven. Okay, well, we just saw that. That was this end time. Unless, as some people think, it happened when the temple was destroyed. And he called that blasphemy. tore his robes. What do we need of further evidence? Well, 26:64. That was the quote. The quote was, Zechariah will see the Son of Man in the future. See the Son of Man sitting at the right hand, advancing upon the clouds of heaven. That went to Daniel 7:13, which we've already read. Okay, in the future. So Daniel 7:13 was in the future, right? So what was in 7:13 couldn't have been historical from before Christ was killed, in other words. And what was in Daniel chapter 7 had to be after Christ was killed. Understand? So all the stuff in Daniel chapter 7 didn't happen until later. Unless you think it all happened when the Romans attacked and destroyed the temple. You can look at it however you want. I think I've connected the dots to Revelation quite well. Alright, so then we'll go up to 27:10. So let's just look on. We know all this. And then it talks about Peter, and they said Peter was with him. The bugle sounded, which was a prophecy about the bugle. He'd already told him that. Because he says, Peter, remember the words of Jesus. Before a bugle sounds, you'll deny me 3 times. So then's when you recognize, again, that, of course, Christ knew that. So obviously he just denied Christ. He already just said before that he wouldn't deny it. So that's why he ran out and wept, because he just told Christ that no matter what happened, that he wouldn't leave him. And here he just denied him 3 times. And Christ just told him he was going to do it. That didn't take long. Okay. Alright, so when dawn arrived, chief priests and the leaders, elders, so on, consulted together so they might effect his death. So they've been trying to kill him. Now they're, alright, we're going to do it. They manacled, put him in handcuffs, in other words, led him away, delivered him over to Pilate, alright, the governor. Then when Judas, who betrayed him, saw that he was condemned, well, he's acting like maybe he didn't realize that they were going to kill him. In other words, they just wanted to talk to him. Maybe that's what they said. But in fact, well, that's probably is what they said. They just wanted to apparently he didn't know that their actual plan was to murder him. Okay, well, maybe that's possible. But still, he committed treason. And we know what's treason? Death, right? Okay. That's the judgment. So they returned the 30 pieces of silver. Then they bought this blood field, which was a prophecy. And that prophecy about 30 pieces of silver is back in Zechariah, which is unusual, but white people look at it because they don't really understand Zechariah. Alright, so what's that to us? Look out for yourself. Flung down the silver, ran away, hanged himself. So the priest picked up the money. So, well, we can't put it in the sacred gifts, right? Saying that it's the price of blood. Oh, this is a great priest. So they bought it at the potter's field. The blood field, they call it, down to the present time. Thus was fulfilled the statement delivered through Zechariah. So that's Zechariah 11:12. Huh. I took the 30 pieces of silver, the amount of valuation which I was valued by the children of Israel. So that's the value of the life of Christ. In other words, 30 pieces of silver. Gave them for the potter's field as the Lord directed me. Yeah, it's interesting that that's over in Zechariah. Alright. Okay, so then he's brought for the governor. Alright, well, we don't need to go beyond that. I can stop right there. Now, let's go back and look at, alright, so we can just kind of do Zechariah in a little bit of a different order here. We can start at the beginning and go to the end, because that would make more sense than going backwards, maybe. There's good points to make in Zechariah. First of all, you start at the beginning, You notice the red horse, the bay horse, the white horse, well, all that stuff's mentioned in Revelation. Yeah. Well, it starts out interesting, 112, about the 70 years. You've been angry for 70 years with the cities of Judah. All right, remember that cities of Judah were only supposed to be in captivity for 70 years. That's what originally they were told. But it didn't turn out that way. Okay, return to Jerusalem. My house will be rebuilt in it, says the Lord. My city shall again expand with prosperity, and the ever-living pity Zion and choose Jerusalem again. That's the end of chapter 1. Well, okay, so we get up to there. Then he talks about the 4 smiths, in other words, workmen. What do those do? They come terrified to express the horns, think kings of the haughty heathen who toss up the land of Judah on their horns. Yes, okay, so it's 2:4. So there's a lot of interesting things here. Is this man going to measure Jerusalem? I saw the angel was conversing with me, go away, and another angel come to him, speak with him, said to him, run and tell this young man, in other words, tell Zechariah, say, Jerusalem shall overflow with population, with a crowd of men and animals. Christ, will be a wall of fire to it all around, says the ever-living, and as a splendor in her heart. Well, look over there at Jerusalem then, if that's what you think. And where is the ever-living as a splendor in the middle of the country of Israel or Jerusalem? Well, they don't want Christ over there. That's today. So when in the last 2,000 years has Christ been a splendor to Jerusalem? Well, it hasn't. It's been a splendor to the Jews for Christ and these 2 witnesses, these 2 empires. When they were founded, that's where the splendor in the heart of Jerusalem has been. So there wasn't, this is the thing people get really confused about. It just uses the word Jerusalem in the Bible. It's up to you to figure out what it's talking about. Everybody thinks because it's talking about Jerusalem, it means over there in the Middle East. But no, when it talks about Jerusalem, is it talking about dirt? Or is it talking about people? In other words, is it geography, which is just a place on the earth, or is it talking about the people of Jerusalem? In other words, the Jews for Christ, if they live in a city, is it talking about them as Jerusalem, or is it talking about dirt in the Middle East? Which is it talking about? Well, obviously, it could be talking about either one. So it's up to you to figure out, well, okay, is it talking about the people who worship Christ and the city they live in as a modern-day Jerusalem? Or where is the modern-day Jerusalem where the Jews for Christ live? They're in these 2 countries, these 2 empires that witness for Christ and have been witnessing for Christ since the foundation of our country. The thing is, we've lost our salt. So now we're coming to the end of that witness because we don't have anybody that understands this stuff, and that's because they're simply not following His law, which was clear to the founders of our country. You just go back to the founding of our country, founding of all these white Christian countries that were founded on this idea of a proper justice system and people understanding the Bible, following God's law, all that, they understood that. They might not have done a very good job of it necessarily, but when they did, they're always blessed for that. So that's the whole point. When your salt still has flavor, Christ can bless you. But when you lose it, eventually, oh, and I forgot to mention chapter 2, verse 2, about the horns are scattered, that scattered Judah and Israel and Jerusalem. Got to be talking about house of Israel, house of Judah. Again, that's who I'm saying the two witnesses are, right? Okay, well, so I'm saying the context of Zechariah, when it starts out, it's really talking about all 12 tribes. Alright, so let's get into 2:14. Shout and rejoice, daughter of Zion, for I will come and reside in your midst. Okay. That's Christ. And many nations will join themselves to the life at that time, and they shall become my people. Right. Remember we already talked about in Hosea 1, 9, and 10, which went over to 1 Peter 2:10, about the holy priesthood, the royal priesthood. Exactly. My people. House of Israel, house of Judah. Here they're all coming together under Christ. He just said Christ would be the splendor in her heart. Alright. So that's end time. But I will reside amongst you, and you shall know that the Lord of hosts has sent me to you when the ever-living possesses Judah as his portion in the Holy Land, and again chooses Jerusalem. For he's awake on his holy hill. Think New Jerusalem. Okay? That's the context. Not the land, the people. Talking about the people. Wherever they are, it's not over there. If you think all these Christian people are going to go back to Jerusalem, you don't understand Scripture. When it says Jerusalem, it's talking about people that are for Christ. If Christ is going to be in the middle of you, it's not talking about people who for 2,000 years have rejected Christ or suddenly just going to get Christ and turn and be Christians all of a sudden. That's not what it's talking about. It's talking about the people in the last 2,000 years who have been following and teaching the message of Christ. That's what it's talking about, the people. Not just a piece of land. It can be a piece of land at times, other times it's people. So the Jerusalem it's talking about is where these Jews for Christ are, which are these two empires. Like we said, Manasseh and Ephraim, controlled by them. It's a prophecy. Alright. Afterwards I saw Joshua, chapter 3. Satan was accusing Joshua. Oh, and Joshua, by the way, Jesus was called Joshua, in fact. I forget which verse that is. It's in the New Testament. It mentions Joshua. It's actually talking about Jesus. But everybody recognizes that. I think that's in the New Testament. It's got to be, I guess. I did run across that a few days ago. Alright. When he talks about this brand snatched from out of the fire, he's talking about pulling his people out of the fire. In other words, his remnant and those that he's going to save out of the fire. Alright, going down. This is chapter 3. Joshua the high priest, you and your companions are witnessing men. That's verse 8. That I will bring out my servant, the branch. Okay, remember the branch? I told you it was the almond branch. It connects back to the almond branch. That's also used in Isaiah multiple times. It's talking about a family tree, his people, which was, again, children of God. Now look at the stone which I placed before Joshua. On that peculiar stone there are 7 eyes. So that's the 7 churches. Of course, the stone is the idea of Christ, the stone. I have engraved the engraving. I will remove the frailties of the earth at that special time. At that time, men will speak with their friends under the vine, under the fig tree. In other words, no more war. That's, what was that? And we already been over it. It was Isaiah chapter 11, I guess. Yeah. Isaiah chapter 11 says the same thing. When the child will be able to walk around with a lion, and everybody will be standing in the fig tree, talking and be happy with their neighbor, and no more war. Same thing here. Okay, the messenger then turned to talk to me, roused me like a man from sleep, asked me, "What are you looking at?" Says, "I saw a lamp of gold, 7 lights, 7 uprights." Well, everybody knows that. It's like the menorah, right? But of course, this is for the Jews for Christ, not the Jews against Christ. Just because you say you follow His law, but in fact you practice Judaism, which is not God's law by any means, right? Like Christ said what Judaism was. It's commandments of men. It's not His law. All right. The 2 olive trees, here again, stood one at the right, one on the left. That's Manasseh and Ephraim, house of Judah, house of Israel. All right. So he asked. So these are the 2 witnesses, and everybody knows this cross-references to the 2 witnesses, not 2 people. 2 witnesses or 2 empires. All right. Because they say Zerubbabel. All right, and who's the other one? Oh, Zerubbabel and Joshua, I guess. All right, so they think, oh, okay, or they think it's some others. Whatever. Everybody has their idea about who it is. It's 2 people, right? But like I pointed out in Revelation, it's talking about war. It's talking about war. It's not talking about 2 people. 2 people are not making war on other empires and conquering empires. It's 2 empires with witnesses for Christ who were founded on God's law, but now they're being judged as the house of God. It's the house of God that's in judgment. We already covered that. We've already seen that prophecy. So that's what it is. All right, that's the context. Stone chosen by the hand of Zerubbabel, those 7 eyes. Okay, that's the 7 churches in Revelation. 2 olives, one on the left, one on the right. 2 olive branches, that's verse 12. It's down to 2 golden feeders, golden standards, depending on what your text says. He says, these are the 2 sons of oil who stand near the master of all earth. Well, who was prophesied as the 2 sons of oil? Ephraim and Manasseh. You don't see any prophecy. Look, just go back and read Jacob's blessing to Genesis 49:10, to the 12 tribes. Who's blessed? Well, the only blessing out of that whole group, Joseph. Well, just back up to chapter 48. Well, okay, well, what was the prophecy? The prophecy was to Ephraim and Manasseh, the great nation and the commonwealth. And of course, Christian nation, Christian commonwealth. Couldn't possibly be anything else. What prophecy would prophesy to 2 nations of people that are offspring of Abraham that don't know anything about Christ? My God, what are people thinking? It's clear. Context is clear. All right, so you get chapter 5, and it goes through all this, but and I've got, even this one still has this. Look at the description, go down, look at the 3 videos on Zechariah chapter 5, and it goes into great detail explaining what it's talking about here. These 2 lumps of lead is uranium and plutonium, but there were no words uranium and plutonium in Scripture, so it says 2 lumps of lead, and the basket's a 40-liter container, so it's a warhead. It's a nuclear bomb, and it's not a. It's a. Some say scroll is how it starts. It's not a scroll. It's a roll. So a roll. It's a tube, and it gives you the dimensions. 34. I think it's 34.5 feet tall, 5 feet or 5.5 wide, or something like that. So it gives you the dimensions. You can figure out. Mine says 20 cubits long, 10 cubits broad. In other words, circumference, I guess. At any rate, the point is. He shows you that measurement is short and fat, which all of your nuclear tipped warheads are short and fat. Doesn't matter which country makes them. All your nuclear warheads are short and fat. The other ones are skinny and long. So he says this is a nuclear warhead, and when it flies up, it goes and fit on the base and all that. It's kind of how. Okay, well, the messenger. Or what is it? All right, mine says 2 women coming up with wind in their wings, right? So has wind in the wings. Well, it has the tail fins, and it says wind in the wings, but that's because it can fly through the sky. So this roll, 34 feet by 5 feet, with the 2 lumps of lead in a 40-liter container that can fly through the sky. Well, what is that? Okay. It's a nuclear missile, which is these stars falling in Revelation, chapter 8 and 9. Simple. But look at the videos. He's got it laid out really, really well. Explains the wording, explains that the woman sit in the basket. The woman, there's 2 different words, and I think it was Esau. I don't remember the numbers, but look at the video. And it's on my chart. If you just look at my chart on Zechariah, it's right there as well. So, then we get back to the horses again. The red horse, white horse, bay horse, so on. Yeah, those are in Revelation. Okay, then it gets into the branch again. That's 6:12. Proclaim, this is the man whose name is the branch, and under it they shall grow who will build the temple of the ever-living. So the branch, this is the children of Christ, or the children of Israel, whatever. The branch is Christ, in other words. So it's a family tree. They'll build the temple of the ever-living. All right, well, think about the temple of the ever-living as New Jerusalem at the end, where I said they'd spent 1,000 years building the foundation. Yeah, well, I said that's what the 1,000 years is for at the end in Revelation chapter 20. They got because the New Jerusalem, the 1,500 miles, if that's the size, that mentions in Revelation chapter 21, that's the pyramid coming down 1,500 miles square. It's the same dimensions, east, west, and then height. All right. Okay. And the temple of the ever-living carry honor, sit, and govern on his throne. All right. Well, who governs on the throne? Well, that's Christ, right? And become an enthroned priest. And peaceful counsel will be amongst them. That's the they that will grow under the branch. That's the children of the 12 tribes. Okay. Just going down. Can't cover everything. Alright, let's go down to 7:9. Thus says the Lord of hosts. Okay. The ever-living command to Zechariah. That's Christ. Practice justice, truth, and right with mercy and kindness, each to his neighbor. That's a proper justice system under God's law. And oppress not the widow, orphan, foreigner, helpless. Do not contrive wrong in the heart against his brother. All right. Exactly what Christ said. That's the law that he said boils down to love Christ, love your neighbor. There it is. But it's a justice system, all right, under God's law. They refused to attend, presented a stiff shoulder, and deadened their ears to the sound. Yeah, okay, well, that's what you got at the moment. Alright, so they refused their heart, rather than listen to the laws and the commands of hosts sent by his Spirit, by the hands of earlier preachers. Great anger came from the Lord of hosts. So yes, when you lose your salt, Christ gets mad because when you're doing what he says, well then he helps you. He's already told you, just do what I say, I'll help you. But when you refuse to do it, and you can't figure out how to do it, even though you have 100,000 churches in your country, and you still can't, the churches can't simply work together just to do what the Bible said, and to do the things you were founded on, and to make sure your government follows the Constitution. You can't do it with 100,000 churches. You don't have any salt. You see, when you can't control your country with 100,000 churches and 100,000 preachers. I heard we actually had 200,000, but it's been getting pared down. You lost your salt. That's why you're judged. Okay. When I proclaimed they would not listen, that's verse 13. So it's 7:13. But scattered them all over the nations whom they knew not. And this country was deserted after them, both the passengers inhabited, for this lovely land was desolate. Yep. Well, after, that's what's going to happen. to be scattered over all nations in captivity, small remnant left behind. Okay? Alright, but he has an affection for Zion, in other words, for his people, those that, of the remnant. So 8, verse 3, I will return to Zion, reside in Jerusalem, when Jerusalem shall be the city of truth. Yeah, so when you go back to doing what he said, and you're the city of truth again, then he'll come back. And the hill of the Lord of hosts, the hill of holiness, think New Jerusalem. That's when it's going to happen. Then it says, old men and old women shall then again reside in Jerusalem, men with sticks in their hands, because of the number of days. Yes. Squares of the city shall be full of children, laughing in its squares. Well, we don't have that, but we will have it. That's when Christ returns. Thus said the Lord, if this is wonderful in the eyes of the fragments of this people in these times, think remnant, should also be wonderful in my eyes. Thus says the Lord, I will rescue my people from the land of the east, the land of the setting sun, bring them back. They're in captivity, like it just said. They shall settle in Jerusalem. We'll think, well, the people he's bringing back are the Jews for Christ, not the ones that rejected him. They haven't changed. It doesn't show that the Jews against Christ changed to the Jews for Christ. That's ridiculous. It doesn't say that. It never says that. It never says the Jews against Christ will, comprehend his law and change. It never says that. It says he separates one from the other. Wheat, tares, so on. And we know what happens to the tares. That's what it always says. It's always in that context. Never about them turning and coming back. So bring them back, settle in Jerusalem, wherever they are. In other words, not over there, but back to their country where the Jews for Christ are. They will be my people. I'll be their God by truth and right. Okay, that's 8:8. It talks about building the temple, blah, blah, blah. But now I am not to the fragments of this people, as in those former times. It's verse 11. Sowing in peace, the vine yields her fruit, and the earth gives its produce, skies give their dew. I cause the fragments of this people to possess all these, and although you became a curse to the heathen, house of Judah and house of Israel. Alright, all 12 tribes. When I rescue you, you shall become a blessing. Fear not, with strength in your hands. So all 12 tribes coming back together under Christ. I decided to punish you and was angry with your fathers, verse 14, and did not spare. So he killed a lot of them. So I will reverse my attention and benefit Jerusalem, and the house of Judah need not fear. These are the rules you must practice. Speak truth to each his number. Practice truth, justice, and peace in your days. Do not devise wrong against your neighbor, and love no false oath, for all is that what I hate. Exactly. Exactly what he said in the New Testament. Proper justice system under his law. That's Ephesians 4:25. Probably is your cross-reference there. Cheerful, when they love truth, nations will come, many cities turn, and populations go to another and say, let us march and pray in the presence of the ever-living. So that's verse 21. And inquire of the Lord of hosts, I myself will go. For many peoples and powerful nations will seek the Lord of hosts at Jerusalem, wherever the Jews for Christ it is. It doesn't have to be over there, although you can always quote a lot of things. It appears that it's over there. No, it's not over there. Because, first of all, New Jerusalem's 1,500 miles square. You can't sit 1,500 mile square pyramid in that little bitty land over there, which is the size of what? Florida? No, it won't fit. The East and the West Sea might be the Pacific and the Atlantic. It certainly would just barely fit over the United States, if you think about it. And we have an East and a West Sea, a real sea, not just a little sea, which is really, we have lakes probably in Minnesota as big as the seas over there. Alright, think about it. It's not over there. In those times, verse 23, 10 men of various languages of the heathen. So, even the heathen, remember, the heathen had to come up for the Feast of Tabernacles. That's in 14, and we'll get to that. Zechariah 14. Encourage the hand, seize the hand of a Jew for Christ, of course, and say, we will go with you, for we hear that God is with you. Yeah, well, at that time they will know that God is with us, because we've read all those prophecies already. For the Lord's eyes are over mankind, this is chapter 9, and on all the tribes of Israel. Think 12 tribes. But, of course, they did things, and like it says, that were wrong. Lord sees, striker power in the sea, fire will consume, blah, blah, blah. Hope will fade away, and the king will fail. The bastard rule and that's not. Now, we read all that on it because we were here. I forget when we were here now, but a few videos back. There's another Zechariah. So we were here already. I think I got it on Zechariah on the other one. Let's just go look. No, it's still in Daniel. Hosea, Habakkuk, Zechariah. Yeah, so there you go. So we were on Zechariah 9:9. So yeah, okay. So we were here because we're in 9. So we were here at 9:9, Matthew 21:5. Yeah. That was a prophecy, like I said, of the first coming of Christ within a prophecy of the second coming of Christ. So I was making the point that this was the second coming of Christ. But Lord God effects his salvation, the flock of his race on that day, bright gems. Yeah, so that's 9, 16, 17, so forth. And I said, well, okay, so that parallels. Alright, so let's skip that. So did we go over, I guess we just went over 9:9. Now we're looking for 11:2, which is 12, which is coming up. Oh, that's about 30 pieces of silver. Yeah, I mentioned that. And then John, of course we haven't got to that, but John is here about looking on those whom he pierced. Yeah, another thing that connects to Revelation 1:7. And then 13:7. Alright, that's the other one. Okay, we've already looked at that one, but we're going through here, so let's try to wrap it up. Okay, we've been through this one and now I went through all that. And then okay, so 10 verse 3, my anger burns against the shepherds, I'll punish the leaders of the flock. Okay, these are the pastors that are misleading you. If ever living visits the flock of his house of Judah, place them like horses ranged for battle. So he's helping the house of Judah specifically, because they're going to be the leader and the director from him, the bow of war and the ruler. So they're the ones that's going to, remember it said that Judah was going to realize that the rest of the 12 tribes were being helped by Christ, I think is how I put it. However, so he's going to be the one leading the fight, and of course for a good reason. And then you scroll down to 10, about to throw down the riders and horses. That's in battle. So those are, whatever, jeeps, Humvees, whatever they're on, tanks, blah blah blah. Okay, so I'll strengthen them, the house of Judah and the house of Joseph. Okay, house of Joseph is all 12 tribes except for Judah, in the sense that Judah is the one running the show. So but we can see that all through Scripture. So that house of Joseph is the two witnesses. All right. And we'll establish them because of pity. They won't be castaways. I'm the ever-living God and will help them. And Ephraim will become a hero. Right? Ephraim. All right. First he said Joseph. Here he says Ephraim because it's Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim's going to become a hero. Hearts will rejoice. Hearts will be glad. I'll whistle for and collect them. When I visit them, they'll increase as they used to increase, although I sowed them among peoples to a distance, so they were in captivity. Now they come back, they'll recollect him, be revived with their children, and return from captivity, right? I'll restore them, or redeem them from Egypt, collect them from Asher, bring them to the land of Gilead and Lebanon, they shall not thirst, right? Okay. Then he'll cross the sea of distress, conquer the sea of willows, and all the channels of the river shall be dried up. So that kind of parallels Revelation 16:12. Pride of Asher, scepter of Egypt be abolished, and be strong in the ever-living march in his name. Alright. Then this part in 11, this is about cedars, pines, that's family trees, oaks of Bashan, those are family trees it's talking about. Alright. Feed the flock for slaughter, this is 11:4, whose guardians murder and do not consider themselves guilty. Right. Alright, well think about Jews for Christ, then the leadership, in other words, they're the ones that think they're intelligent and know what they're talking about. For the shepherds pity them not, therefore I no more pity the inhabitants of the country. I'll abandon the men each to the hand of the neighbor and to the hand of his leader, and they shall harry the land. I will not deliver it from their hands. Yes, so a lot of people can be killed. Then he gets into beauty and bonds, and then when he gets down to the 30 pieces of silver. Poor the flock who kept with me knew that it was the command of God. Oh yeah, alright, well look at verse 11, because it's talking about the beauty and the bonds, the covenant, in other words. So, but the poor of the flock who kept with me, that means followed his law and knew it was the command of the ever-living. So I knew these prophecies. So it's the poor. Not the leadership of the church who understand the prophecies, but just the people who probably don't even go to church. Alright. Now said to them, it's good in your opinion, pay me my wages. Talks about 30 pieces of silver, and that's what it's referring to in Matthew 27:9. Alright. So flip that through it in the treasury. Then I cut my staff bonds into to break the other treaty with Judah and Israel. So think all 12 tribes. Take, in other words, look like a simple shepherd. In other words, basic, lowborn. Okay, those are the people who understand this stuff, and the people that just follow God's law and believe in Christ and pray to Him every day to give them food. Right? All right. So be sure now, I will raise up a destructive shepherd who will not visit the young, nor seek the wounded, nor care for the sick. So these are your, what do you call the preachers? Hirelings. So these are your hirelings, the people that are in church, running the church, but they won't be there once the people leave, and once the country's attacked. You won't even be able to find these people unless you know where they live, right? They won't be going around helping people and so on and so forth. They'll be just taking care of themselves if they're still alive, right? Woe to that worthless shepherd who forgets the flock. That's not good. All right. Ever living extended the heavens, chapter 12, verse 1. Founded the earth, formed the spirit of man in his breast. Look, I'll make Jerusalem a cup of staggering to all the people, and they'll also be against Judah. Yes, at that time I'll make Jerusalem a heavy stone for all the people. Whoever carries it will be crushed. Yeah, all right. Well, think. What does that go to? Revelation. Oh no. Well, I'm saying first. That's cross references 1 Peter, chapter 2. There. Okay. We've been to about the royal priesthood. Just read that whole section. Chapter 2, 4 through 10, I think. All right. At that time I'll strike every horse with madness and his rider in frenzy, and will open my eyes upon the house of Judah, strike all the horsemen of the nation. Alright, let's talk about armies. He says, the heavy stone, whoever carries it be crushed. Okay, he's talking about armies coming against his people, but then he judges his people, so he lets a lot of his people die, but then when it gets down to the ones he has been protecting, then he'll eventually step in and say, okay, here I am. Alright, that's what it said. Strike all the horsemen and chieftains of Judah, reflect in their hearts. The people of Jerusalem are my strength. Okay, that's what I was trying to get at before. Just couldn't remember the verse. At that time, chiefs of Judah be a fire great to wood, torch of fire to the sheaves. They shall consume on the left and right. So consume the people who are the armies. Okay. And Jerusalem shall again reside under herself. Everything will first rescue the tents of Judah, So the house of David may not exalt. Okay, well you can figure out what it means there. The ever living at that time will defend the population of Jerusalem. Okay. Jews for Christ, any of the 12 tribes who understand. Simple people, mostly farmers and just regular people out here. Their feeble shall become at that time like David, and the house of David shall become like a divine power. Okay, with Christ at its head, like a messenger of the ever-living or an angel of the ever-living before them. Yes, Christ is at the head of the house of David. I will seek to destroy all the heathen. So again, just destroying all the heathen, or these armies who came against his people. He empowers them to do that, but then he turns around and destroys them. Alright, well, whatever. Pour out upon myself, house of David, and the population, so all the spirit of kindness and compassion, and they shall look upon him whom they pierce and mourn over him. Well, it's the 12 tribes mourning, it's not the whole earth. Most who don't even know Christ or anything about it, mourning over Christ, they're not going to recognize Christ. No, the people who are going to recognize Christ are these people here that are left, that understand, they've been praying about Christ, trying to follow his law and do the right things, and the rest of the Christian people won't listen. Doesn't matter what they say, if it's right, they just don't listen. Okay? So they're going to mourn. They're mourning over a loved one. They're going to grieve over him as the firstborn, because at this point, all these other Christian people, they've been killed off. They thought they were going to fly away, but in fact they were murdered. All right. So that's why they're mourning. They're mourning because they wish that these people would have listened, their neighbors, their church members, their pastors, and yet they wouldn't change. They just, hard-headed. That's what it boils down to. Great mourning. All right. At that time, verse 13, there'll be a fountain open for the house of David. So this is the water of life. This is the fountain, the waters over here in 14:8. And in that period, living waters will extend from Jerusalem, half to the east, half to the west. So people are thinking over there, the eastern sea and the western sea, the Mediterranean, I don't know. Because we're talking about New Jerusalem. This is when Christ returns. 1,500 miles square, that doesn't fit over Jerusalem. Only fits over the United States. Alright. Or Europe. Wherever you want to look at it. Don't fit over there. Alright. Destroy their idols. This should no longer be remembered. Remove their preachers and their foul spirits. So there go the preachers who were the destructive shepherd in 11:16. They're destroying you. That's why I keep harping on the pastors that just need to change and understand and read all this stuff and learn. Okay, if they don't know it, fine. They need to learn it, because you got a very short period of time to learn all this things. So you should watch all these videos and just, whatever I got that's right, let it go to heart. All right. Otherwise, you're getting ready to be removed. That's not going to be good. All right. Well, you can read on that. About their tattoos. And then sword, rise against my shepherd, and against the man is my companion. And that was the cross reference to Matthew 26:31. Strike the shepherd. 2 parts in the country be cut off and die, and the third shall remain. I'll pass the third through the fire. That's 13:9. Test them as gold is tested. Yeah, that's the remnant being tested, in other words. And it shall call on my name. So think Jews for Christ. I'll answer it. He'll proclaim it is my people. So that's those, my people who were once not a people, but now they are. And they're Jews for Christ. It doesn't say anything about Gentiles and about the whole world, just whoever praises Christ. It doesn't say that. It never says it. They just make that up. That's what churches teach. But it ain't what Scripture teaches. They like it. It sounds good. I agree. Whatever. Then the day of the Lord will come. Chapter 14. Alright. Collect all the heathen against Jerusalem to war. Again. So it's just repeating what I already said. But again, I said it was war. They will capture the city, plunder the houses, ravish the women, half the city, go out in captivity. Okay. Then the ever-living will go out to fight with those heathen, as in a time of war. Yes, of course, there won't be much of a war, not with Christ doing it. Fix his feet time on the Mount of Olives. Okay. Well, one foot might be on the Mount of Olives, and the other foot might be over in Japan, for all we know. It talks about the Mount of Olives being split. Okay, fine. But New Jerusalem isn't going to be there, because that ain't where the Jews for Christ live. They're not going back there. The ever-living comes with all his saints. Revelation 19:14. So that's verse 14 of Zechariah, verse 5. Ever-living comes with all his saints in Revelation 19:14. Right? When that time arrives, there'll not be the cold light of stars. There'll be continuous day. That's another thing it says about New Jerusalem, that when God takes up residence in the top of the temple, that there'll be continuous light. That's what it's talking about. Pointing by the ever-living, either day or night. Alright, and that parallels to, should cross-reference Isaiah 60:20 and Revelation 22:5. When the period of darkness comes, there'll be light. In other words, when night rolls around in New Jerusalem, there ain't going to be any night. Then you have the living waters, will extend from Jerusalem half to the seas, both summer and winter. Ever-living will be king over all earth. Exactly. Melchizedek. One Lord and his name one. Okay. And the country south of Jerusalem will be changed like the plain, blah, 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 by inhabited. Jerusalem shall be inhabited in security. Of course it will. And this will be the disease of which everything will afflict all the peoples who have warred against Jerusalem. Alright, now I said, well, the flesh wastes away while they stand on their feet. There's only one way we know, and that's an intense heat. Now we know that nuclear weapons do the same thing. At least we've seen videos of that kind of thing. And that was the only thing we know at the moment that would waste people away on their feet. Obviously, the return of Christ could waste people away on their feet, because it says he'll be like sun, 7 days sun all at the same time. Yeah, that could be an intense heat that way. So it could be a lot of things. But I'm just saying, describe nuclear missile in chapter 5, so maybe this is the same context. But still, people that fought against the holy people, the Jews for Christ, the two witnesses, this is what it's talking about. Okay. Then a great disturbance from the everlasting will come upon them, and each will seize the hand of his neighbor, rise up hand to hand to injure him, and Judah will also fight against Jerusalem. So, this is still a time of war, apparently. Then all the heathen will collect their armies, again, armies, war, with gold, silver, blah, blah. Then a plague will come upon the horses, mules. So, yeah, it's not horses and mules. Think whatever you're driving. Tanks, you're flying planes, you have a navy, whatever. Okay, whatever gets war machinery you have that you're moving around the country on. And all the cattle in their camps, all their food, like the above disease. Well, okay, so whatever, but, you know, wasting away while they're standing on their feet. So, again, nuclear war maybe. So at the end, maybe they're nuked. Who knows? Alright, so afterwards, all the remainder of the nations, verse 16, who came against Jerusalem. So the heathen, all the heathen, regularly go up year by year to honor the King, honor Christ, the Lord of hosts, will keep the Feast of Tabernacles. So you can figure out why he wants the Feast of Tabernacles. But everybody on earth will keep the Feast of Tabernacles. And they'll come to New Jerusalem, or, you know, however, you can say, okay, well, if they're way over here, thousands of miles away, how are they going to come to New Jerusalem? I don't know. What difference does it make? He says it's going to happen. That you'll see it if you make it that far. And he says, and whoever will not go up, verse 17, from the land to worship the King, he said, it's too much trouble. No rain shall fall upon them. So they're not going to eat. They're not going to have food. When he says no rain, what he's talking about, you're not going to be able to eat, so you're going to get really hungry. So maybe you're going to come for the Feast of Tabernacles next year after you starve for a year. Okay. That's the idea. So he's going to motivate them to come. If the families of Egypt do not arise, it will not fall on them. It will not fall on them. Every living will afflict with the plague those of the nations who do not ascend to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. Alright. This will be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of every nation which does not come to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. 3 times. Alright. That time they put on the bells of the horses sacred to the Lord. Blah, blah, blah. Well, okay. Every pot in Jerusalem, so I think New Jerusalem, will be consecrated to the Lord of hosts. So they'll have plenty of food. Yeah. The Feast of Tabernacles, maybe that'll be where they get their food from. In other words, the heathen nations will provide the food for the 12 tribes, if you want to look at it that way. Alright. In that period, there'll be no more trading in the house of ever living. So, yeah, no more banking, no more ways of stealing money and so on. You won't need money because actually everybody will be doing work without money. Won't be any need for money. Not when you have New Jerusalem in crisis here, there won't be any need for money. Everybody will just do whatever jobs they got to be done. And they'll do it because they eat and they have a place to live and, you know, there's no war, so they're happy. So we don't need to make airplanes and the Navy, and don't need all that stuff because there's no war. All you need is food and, you know, knowledge of medicine, maybe, and stuff like that. So that's it. Let's wrap up, and we'll come back with 12. Let's just switch back over. Alright. So we've gone through all these. So basically we finished Matthew. We'll come back with Mark, but of course these we've already covered. We've already covered Isaiah 43 and 29, this and this. So in reality, it'll be a lot easier because we only have to do these that we haven't actually covered yet. So we haven't done Psalms 148:1, but we've done the others. So in other words, once we get to Mark, well, gee, we don't need to do a whole lot because a lot of these have already been done. So we'll do 11:10. I only got to do 2 in Mark, so that'll be pretty quick. All right, so we'll come back with 11 on, is it 11? 12? On Mark 11:10. Well, that'll be the next video. Thanks for watching, and take these videos. At least send out people the links. I mean, you're my marketing campaign to people that look at it and say, okay, this makes sense. My pastor needs to see this. Other people, that, you know, that's when you're one of the remnant. Is when you're taking the truth. If you see it, and you think this makes sense, should show it to people. You know, that's what makes you the remnant. Even if you can't understand it, find somebody else that maybe can. Get it out there. Promote it. You know, let your faith, let that be your works for your faith, as it says in James. All right, so thanks for all my supporters.